The Chiefs survive a sloppy Monday Night Football contest, and we have no idea what to make of anybody in the AFC. Who are the contenders, and do we buy them? We're going to play a little bit of Lock It or Mock It, and then we are going to head to the Tuesday Fantasy Forum. We got to deal with that Derrick Henry injury and Adrian Peterson signing with the Titans and all of that stuff. So do not miss it here on the Locked On NFL podcast.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On NFL podcast. It is Tuesday. That means you get me, Luke Braun, at Luke Braun NFL on Twitter. Ross Jackson is unavailable right now, so we are joined. Always a pleasure to be joined here by Alex Clancy at Clancy's Corner. And thank you so much for making the Locked On NFL podcast your first listen of the day. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the AFC Contenders. We're going to do the Tuesday fantasy thing, but first we got to start with whatever we just witnessed on Monday Night Football. The Chiefs, I guess, equaling out 20-17 is the final score there. And I mean, it just seemed like one of those games where both teams were trying so hard to lose. So many sloppy mistakes, so many penalties, so many turnovers and stuff. We kind of knew the Giants were stinky, but the Chiefs are sitting at 4-4, and it's the most hideous 4-4 ever. I don't know. I don't know where to go with them, what to do with them.
Yeah, I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire isn't that important to this team, so you can't blame his absence.
No,
Terrell Williams, the run game was great by all accounts. What blows my mind, Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings, is this offensive line that they brought $1 billion into to pay isn't gelling, it seems.
No.
Like, it's worked some, but you have Creed Humphrey at center, and sometimes a rookie playing center, it takes a little while to mold, because a great center, and I know this firsthand with Rodney Hudson with the Cardinals, is he'll help the guards with their jobs. And if a center is only focused on his specific role, it kind of makes the rest of the offensive line crumble if he's not able to take care of that role on his own. Now, I don't know what's going on. They're now just looking very top heavy on offense. And the defense is giving up over 400 yards a game. They're lucky to play the Giants tonight. Yeah. So I don't know what the hell's going on. This is far beyond a hangover. You know, this is far beyond losing the Super Bowl hangover.
It is a little bit losing the Super Bowl hangover, because when you win your conference, every single person who's up for a contract is going to want that much more. Hey, look, we were successful. You better pay me if you want to keep this going, right? That's how things have gone for decades. And so by nature, you can't keep as many people around, and then you got to do new things. But I think you hit it dead on with the center. And I am not familiar enough with the Chiefs. I cover an NFC team, and you cover an NFC team. So go listen to Ryan Tracy if you want more detail over at Locked On Chiefs, right? But that would make a lot of sense, because for me, offensive line, I say it on my show all the time, it has to be 5 bodies on one brain. That brain is the center's brain. And so if he's making mental errors, kind of doesn't matter what you paid for Orlando Brown Jr. or Mike Remmers or any of those guys, or Joe Thuney. Like, if those mistakes are being made and you're leaving one-on-ones where they're not supposed to be and stuff, then that can kind of put everybody in bad situations. And that's not to take blame off of everybody who gives up pressures and sacks in a game, but it is a thing that can happen. And what that does is it kicks Patrick Mahomes into hero mode. And when you have 2 deep lurking safeties in hero mode, that's when you can force Patrick Mahomes to make risky throws. And I think Eli Manning said it on the Manning cast. He got away with that for 2-3 years. Now he's not getting away with it anymore, and he's still pushing that envelope. He might still be right to push that envelope. But, you know, you're bringing in an element of luck, and the luck's bad this year.
Yeah, and they need an intermediate pass route runner. I mean, Tyreek Hill can
they need like a route running. Yeah,
like a I don't know.
Like Adam Thielen. We were talking about this before the show.
Yeah. Or, you know, Cooper Kupp is now in the upper echelon, so you can't really look at him the same. They need
he's like a burner to me.
Yeah, they need like a Julian Edelman-ish, even a Brandon Cooks-ish, a guy that can run routes. Like Tyreek Hill is the fastest person on the planet wearing an NFL uniform. Okay. But when Travis Kelce is bracketed, and you're right, the 2 high safeties, you can't just dump down your running back every play. Like Andy Reid's supposed to be this wizard. The NFL's caught up. Now adjust and adapt.
Right.
The Giants defense has been fine. They gave up a 40 burger to Dallas. I mean, they've given up a bunch of points to other teams, But this Chiefs offense was legitimately struggling. They were struggling with this Giants defense, and sure, turnovers had something to do with it, but man,
and unlucky turnovers.
Bracketed the whole game.
Yeah, unlucky turnovers. And the Chiefs have been unlucky, and it's probably a hard sell for a Chiefs fan to say, hey, the luck will turn around eventually, but it kind of does turn around at some point always. And don't forget the Chiefs won this game, and we should probably focus on the team that lost it. For all the things we're complaining about with the Chiefs because we had higher expectations for them, but the Giants, it feels like Joe Judge played very, very scared in this game. And maybe I'm ultra sensitive because I just watched a primetime game where my Vikings did something very similar, where there was throwing behind the sticks and third downs. There was a lot of punting on makeable 4th and 1s near midfield in situations where they came into this point as a 10.5 in this game as a 9.5, 10.5 point underdog, depending on what book you looked at. I believe it was 10.5 at BetOnline.ag. And when you're that much of a dog, you gotta play more aggressive than that.
Sometimes wide receiver contracts take a while to look like mistakes. Kenny Golladay, 4 years, $72 million, $40 million guaranteed. And he ain't playing. So this is something, and sure, maybe he'll come back. He's shown that when he's healthy, he's a wide receiver 1, probably low end wide receiver 1 if we're talking in fantasy football terms. And who needs them? Daniel Jones. He needs that. Him and Kadarius Toney on the field at the same time would be electric. But sweet mother, ain't nobody staying healthy. Now, so piling on over, let me ask you, after watching tonight, do you believe in the Chiefs?
Yeah, I'm not giving up on them. I think the luck turns around. I know it's a hard sell because of all the turnovers, but it's never, the streak is already improbable. It never keeps going.
And what's the name of the segment we're going to do next? Me being the novice?
Yeah. So Ross and I do a segment all the time called Lock It or Mock It, where we decide, do we take it? Do we believe in them? That's we locking it in, or are we mocking them? So lock it or mock it here on the Locked On NFL podcast. We're going to talk about some AFC contenders. Maybe not the Chiefs. They're at 500. I think they need some more wins before they get back in that conversation. But there are a lot of contenders in the AFC. We don't really know what to make of them. So we're going to play a little bit of Lock It or Mock It, and then we're going to do the Tuesday Fantasy Forum a little bit later.
Yeah, well, there's one thing that you should never mock Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings ever, and that's Getupside.
Oh boy.
You lock it in, you lock it in, you lock it in. It's an incredible
25 cents a gallon.
Yeah. Everybody who buys gas needs to know about Getupside. Listeners, as Luke mentioned, are making up to 25 cents for every gallon of gas every time they fill up. All you got to do is download the free Getupside app. Go to the App Store or Google Play right now. Save money on gas. Use promo code TOUCHDOWN and get a bonus 25 cents per gallon on your first fill up. That's up to 50 cents cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Getupside. Again, use promo code TOUCHDOWN and you get up to 50 cents per gallon cash back on your first tank. Download the free Getupside app. That's all you need to know.
All right, before we get into Lock It or Mock It, it is the trade deadline today. Tuesday, November 2nd. Tomorrow on the Locked On NFL podcast, they'll probably talk about it, but we have a live show going on. So if you're watching this on YouTube, come back 3 to 5 Eastern time, and we will be breaking down every move, every trade with local experts and everything, the whole deal. Big, giant live show. If you are a fan of the NBA shows, we've done it there as well. So come check it out right here on the Locked On NFL YouTube channel from 3 to 5 Eastern time. Now, let's move on to Lock It or Mock It. So we've got a list of AFC contenders, but nobody's perfect in the AFC. We're a long way from the, Tom Brady and everybody else era of the AFC, and everybody's got their question marks. So I guess I want to start with the team that went into week 8 as the number 1 seed in the AFC. That is the Bengals, or the Bungles if they're bad. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and all this stuff, but they just dropped a stinker to the Jets. Tell me, Alex Clancy, lock it or mock it, Cincinnati Bengals?
Lock it, and it's not because the offense, because the defense is showing up. Like the defense it's progressing. Let's say it's not a lockdown defense. It's not a top 7, top 10 defense, but the best friend to a budding quarterback is a run game and a defense. And with Joe Mixon healthy, they've got that. And with this defense in place, it allows the offense to stick to planogram, stick to spec, stick to a game plan.
Right.
Or unless you don't have to, throw it out when you go down 10-0 because your defense can't stop anybody. I may for sure lock it in. I mean, Jamar Chase is making everybody look stupid. I mean, like me, who said Penny Sewell was the right choice there. He looks like the best receiver we've ever seen through 8 weeks. He just does. I mean, numbers-wise, he does.
I wish we would have been able to argue that because I was all about them taking Jamar Chase back then.
Man.
I wasn't a huge Sewell guy, but that's a different thing. I'm with you. Lock it. Because I think the Bengals are one of the smarter teams in the league. I think coaching-wise, they're very smart. You've got, I think Zach Taylor's running a lot of things, but I think Joe Burrow is using his brain a lot to outsmart NFL defenses, which is incredible in his second year. That is an awesome thing that you don't often see from players. But defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo, and look how to pronounce that. Lou Anarumo is coordinating some really, really excellent and interesting stuff. And he's been the coordinator there for a bit and was kind of not very well liked. And now he's really, really in his bag. They are a difficult team to go up against because they are doing smart and creative things and presenting challenges for their opponents. Now, I know that's probably hard for Bengals fans because they just dropped a game to Mike White and the Jets and their backup quarterback and all that stuff. It happens. But I don't give up. Stay the course, I think, because I think the Bengals can really make something out of this year. But Alex, give me a team.
Chargers, Luke Braun, lock it or mock it.
It's really difficult. As a contender, by the way, this is not just do we think they're good. Of course they're good. They're 5-2.
Yeah.
But as a contender, I think I'm going to go with Lockett on them as well. I believe in Justin Herbert. I believe in Brandon Staley. And he won me over. I did not like that hire. You can go back and listen to me decry it on this very podcast. I'll eat crow there. I think he's done a very, very good job of keeping that team modern and not just trying to port over where he had success with the Rams onto the Chargers because it's a different group of people. But I think, I buy into it. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, the whole deal just seems like it's working.
But let me ask you, and I know you covered an NFC team and we're not as tight with, but the Chargers have given up a lot of points. Like Brandon Staley's supposed to be the defensive guy. And you have Derwin James, you have Joey Bosa. I know they lost Melvin Ingram. They seem to be very Ramsey top heavy on defense. And they should be one of the lockdown defensive teams. So I just don't know if their defense is good enough to keep up with their offense, allow the offense to do what they want. And I agree. I'm going to lock it too because
I was going to say, sounds like you're trying to mock it.
No, because I trust them more than most other teams in the AFC. Like if we were talking full on Super Bowl contenders, I might say mock because I just don't know. I mean, best out of 3, do you pick the Chiefs or do you pick the Chargers to win 2 out of 3 games?
Well, if we're talking about the worst thing about the Chargers is its defense, in that particular matchup, they still have the advantage there. So I would have to pick the Chargers. Next up, we're going to stick to the AFC West. We're going to take the team that is currently leading the AFC West, and that is your Las Vegas Raiders. No coach, because John Gruden had to step down in disgrace, and yet they are still winning games. Derek Carr, Darren Waller, Henry Ruggs, Hunter Renfrow in the renaissance that he is. What do you got?
I mean, I just have to go with history and go with the fact that they're the Raiders, and I'll mock it. Like Derek Carr was the greatest thing on the planet when they were 13-3 before he broke his leg? I honestly can't remember. He's either his hand or his leg. I know he got injured
season. Yeah, he got injured.
Yeah. And they had their backup coming in for the playoffs. I don't believe it. I don't think the defense is good enough. I don't trust their run game. They have $200 million set aside for their backfield, and you can't trust any of them to stay on the field with Josh Jacobs, Kenyon Drake, etc. I just don't. If they had a sustainable run game with somebody you could trust and not be injured every other play, I might flip it here. But I just don't trust that Derek Carr with Darren Waller bracketed and Hunter Renfrow being this next level guy. I just don't see that being an elixir to go deep and make a deep playoff run. What about you?
I wish we had one where we disagreed because I'm going to mock it too with the Raiders. And part of it is, there's a history of Derek Carr where I think even at his best, there still seems to be kind of a ceiling there. But also, I'm worried about interim head coach. He's done a good job so far. They've managed to not completely fall apart, but there's some inexperience to that, and that starts to matter more when you get to the end of the season. And I'm also with you that I don't really buy into that run game, and it seems like a difficult way to win games. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head.
My last one is, this is touchy because they no longer have their best player. Lock it or mock it. Tennessee Titans sans Derrick Henry.
I'm going to shock the world. I'm going to lock it. And I'm not going to make some hackneyed point about running backs don't matter or whatever, because Derrick Henry absolutely matters. But here's the deal. They are running away with the division. They're not going to get caught. Sorry, Colts fans. It's over. It's not going to happen. So they're in a similar spot to like the Cowboys in the NFC East. Where they can sort of take luxuries and they have time to figure this out. There's not a lot of pressure on the Titans right now, and they can figure out how to win without leaning on Derrick Henry. And maybe that means leaning on Adrian Peterson. Maybe they just do the same thing. It totally just works out. Maybe that means, more of Ryan Tannehill to AJ Brown or whatever. But they have time to figure out what sort of identity they get to have throughout the rest of the season. And essentially now to January, they're going to win their division. They're going to get a home playoff game. They have time. They're set up to do it. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to agree with you. Like this is an easy one to potentially flip, but their defense has played pretty well this year. And that's kind of something that, like, the Chiefs defense this year was Tennessee's defense last year. They had 0 pass rush. They held the Chiefs to 3 points when they played them. Now, sure, they're not coming in and out. The Cardinals put up a 38 burger in week 1, but week 1 doesn't really count. It's a glorified preseason game that counts. I feel like, say Derrick Henry averages 120 yards rushing per game. Not saying that flippantly, just say that's the number. Game in, game out, that's what you're going to get from him. If you can get 85 rushing yards with 2 guys that can run between the tackles hard and set up the play action, that's all you need. The rest of it with the breakaway touchdowns and everything, that's a luxury. Ryan Tannehill might have to run the ball a little bit more. Might run a little bit more RPO, but if Julio Jones can stay healthy and AJ Brown can stay healthy, Ryan Tannehill has proven he can win big games. And it's the weirdest thing to say that Adam Gase screwed him up so much in Miami.
Yeah, it's been a long time since the Miami.
Right. And he's a completely different quarterback now. And the fact that the game is moving, it's lending more towards his playing style, where he's more of a runner than Mahomes and Rodgers, and he's not as much of a passer as, I don't know, whoever hucks about Joe Burrow 40 times a game. He is a he's a perfect mix for any type of weather and any type of defense if he doesn't turn the ball over. And I feel like I still see them as a potential fringe Super Bowl contender. I mean, they have all the pieces if the defense can stop other teams, which is wild to say, but that offense may be more 2021 without Derrick Henry. I'm not saying it's going to be better, but I'm saying you can just let the restrictor plate off and see how many points this offense can score when you're hucking it, because they haven't had to with him.
They can kind of find out who else they can be. And they have to figure out what to do without Derrick Henry. Maybe you have to figure out what to do without Derrick Henry, too. If you had him in fantasy, you got to figure out, should you go for the Adrian Peterson thing somewhere else? Marcus Mosher is going to come help us sort all of that out coming up on the Tuesday Fantasy Forum.
You know what? That was a vacation transition right there. I felt like I was on vacation watching Luke Braun. That was as sexy as sitting on the beach looking at the ocean. And in life, we're all bound for different things. With beachbound.com vacations, you could be bound for adventure, bound for passion, bound for discovery, or bound for togetherness, bound for immersion, bound for rejuvenation, or maybe you'll be bound for encountering the unexpected. Personally, when I'm at a beach resort, I'm bound to end up at the poolside bar or maybe creating my own taco flight. I love tacos. As long as I've got a good view and a great drink in my hand, I'm happy as I can be. With beachbound.com, you can find the perfect beach vacation for you, no matter what you're looking for, whatever beach you want. Beachbound.com. What are you looking for? What are you bound for? Visit beachbound.com today.
All right, it's Tuesday. Time to talk a little bit of fantasy football here on the Tuesday Fantasy Forum. We got Marcus Mosher here of Locked On Fantasy Football and Locked On Cowboys, I guess. Marcus, thanks so much for coming and joining. If you can resist gloating about the outcome of Sunday Night Football, let's talk about some of the big news of the week. Usually we start with big performers, but I feel like we have to start with the Derrick Henry thing.
Yeah, we should definitely talk about that. And thank you, Luke, for mentioning my podcast, Locked On Cowboys. We do a daily podcast every day for the 6-1 Dallas Cowboys.
I haven't heard of it.
Adrian Peterson. I know there's people just out there assuming he's going to be the lead back there and he's going to get Derrick Henry's 28 carries a game. And it's possible. I'm just not one of those people because he's the last couple of times we saw Adrian Peterson, he looked incredibly washed. Darrington Evans will eventually come back. They have Jeremy McNichols. My guess is that the Titans are going to lean more into their passing attack. So we're not going to see that sheer volume from Peterson. So if Peterson's out there and you can pick him up for free, you can do that. But I'm probably not blowing the rest of my fab budget on Peterson this week.
Marcus, one thing that we saw over the weekend was that backup quarterbacks can win football games in the NFL, whether you want to believe that would be possible or not.
I know that very well. Thank you, Alex, for reminding me.
Well, again. You know what? And Luke, I don't know if
I would like to exit this conversation.
Well, I guess you could say Kirk is a glorified back. It doesn't matter. With the Jets game was the most interesting to me because we saw this in Washington years ago where RG3 came in as a second overall pick, lowly Kirk Cousins in the fourth round pick out of Michigan State. Mm-hmm. There's no chance that Mike White's going to have any sort of fantasy relevance, is there?
No, but if you are a fantasy owner of like Michael Carter, I think you actually want Mike White to start as long as possible because one of the things that Zach Wilson wasn't doing was taking the checkdowns and the underneath throws. He was trying to play some hero ball. Mike White is perfectly content just throwing the ball underneath 45 times a game like he did on Sunday. We saw that when he was with the Cowboys in preseason. It was so frustrating to see him not throw the ball down the field. But you don't care if you own Michael Carter. He has 15 receptions over the last 2 weeks. I think this is what we want to see from our fantasy guys. So, yeah, you're hoping that Mike White can continue to start for the next 3, 4, 5 weeks.
Let's expanding things. There were a lot of problems, a lot of big injury problems that reared their ugly head. Jameis Winston out for the year. We have Derrick Henry out for the year. You have those guys on your teams. You got to be searching that waiver wire. So, are there any emergency replacement type options out there that we can look for?
Yeah, I think a good one is Taysom Hill. Now, it's still up in the air what's going to happen with the Saints. Are they going to lean into Trevor Siemian being the starting quarterback? Is it going to be Taysom Hill? I don't know, but we know Sean Payton is just infatuated with Taysom Hill. And I think he wants every opportunity to start him like he did last year. So Taysom Hill last year, anytime he played was a top 10 fantasy quarterback because of that Konami code, being able to run the ball. Mm-hmm. I think that's somebody that you do want to go out and grab. I will say it does make me a little bit nervous about Alvin Kamara because we saw last year, whenever Taysom Hill started, Kamara's fantasy production went way down, especially in the passing game. So
he'd become his own check down, and now Kamara's not getting passes.
Yeah, it's interesting because I have Kyler Murray and I'm looking for a backup, and it's interesting you bring this up. And we saw on the back end, I believe it was a back end cover by Houston with Davis Mills during garbage time in the second half of the game against the Rams. They don't have an unfavorable schedule coming up. I'm looking at it right now. They have Dolphins, Titans, Jets. Colts is a tough defense. Seahawks and Jaguars the next 6 weeks. Is there any value in Davis Mills as a starter?
Or Tyrod Taylor?
Yeah, no, I think it's Tyrod Taylor. That's the answer, right? Because I guarantee you he's on your waiver wire right now. He might not start next week, but in week 10, week 11, I think Tyrod's going to be back there. And as we know, whenever Tyrod plays, he's really good for fantasy. So that's a great guy to pick up now a week ahead of time before he gets back onto the field.
Could be kind of one of those sneaky guys that ends up, making a late surge for your playoffs. And I mean, things are starting to kind of get to that point where you've only got how many weeks until, 6, 7 weeks, depending on your format.
Not many. And we're getting close to the trade deadlines in a lot of leagues. So start making trades for some of these quarterbacks that have favorable schedules. Ryan Tannehill is another one, especially with Derrick Henry going down. The playoff schedule was really nice for him. So guys like Tyrod, Ryan Tannehill could be the reason why you win a fantasy championship this year.
All right, Marcus, before we let you go, I got one more thing for you. This is kind of, we've gone through enough of the season now where we can start to make some tough decisions. I want a hot take, somebody you can drop.
Ooh, outside of Derrick Henry?
Yeah, like a hot take.
How about Laviska Shenault? This is somebody who a lot of people drafted in the 6th, 7th, maybe 8th round in your fantasy drafts this year. He got moved from the slot to the outside receiver to the X receiver. And Jamal Agnew replaced him as the slot receiver. He's been getting more targets. That offense is atrocious in Jacksonville. So I think you're safe to drop Laviska Shenault and just not worry about him anymore. And I know that's frustrating for people out there like me who had high hopes for Shenault, but he's not going to be important to you the rest of the way.
All right, Marcus, thank you so much for giving us all this fantasy advice. Again, you can find him on the Locked On Fantasy podcast, Locked On Cowboys. We'll see you
Locked
later,
On Cowboys, baby.
We'll see you later, Marcus.
Thanks, guys.
Tomorrow on the show is Power Rankings Wednesday. Also, we will have all of the news from the trade deadline, so can't miss episode tomorrow. Tony Wiggins and James Rapine will have you all set up there. You can also check out the Peacock and Williamson podcast for more of that national NFL angle. Those guys doing a great job over there. We will see you all tomorrow here on the Locked On NFL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.